The Union Aerospace Corporation is the largest corporate entity in existence. Originally focused on weapon and defense contracts, new ventures have expanded into biological research, space exploration, and other scientific endeavors. With unlimited funds and the ability to engage in research outside of moral and legal obligations, the UAC controls the most advanced technology ever conceived.
Full confession, I just now finished Doom 3 for the first time, though it technically was the first Doom game I ever bought. I bought the Doom 3 Bfg Edition all the way back in 2013. Having never played any Doom game before that, I thought it was a really good value since Doom 1 and 2 were included. Over the years, I have rebought all the classic Doom games a handful of times on Steam, GOG, even the new Unity ports on Bethesda, including the original version of Doom 3. I've tried playing through the game many times, getting a few levels in before dropping the game to play something more exciting. I didn't really like Doom 3 and never really felt like playing it much. Doom 3 is kind of the black sheep of the Doom family. It seems like one of those games you either love or you hate. I didn't play the game growing up. I was born in 1994. I was 10 when the game came out, so I don't have any sentimental attachment to it, but people who like Doom 3 love Doom 3. Many people consider it to be the best in the series. Many people want to see the franchise become more like Doom 3 again. So I decided to finally sit myself down and play through the game until the end, and see if I agree with the champions of Doom 3. I played it on Veteran, since that's the hardest difficulty upon starting it out. Since it's the Halloween season and Doom Eternal came out this year, I thought it would be the perfect time to talk about and review Doom 3, id's attempt at a survival horror installment for Doom. So, I'm just going to be completely honest. Having finished Doom 3, I still don't really like this game. In fact, a lot of it straight up sucks. It's by far my least favorite game in the series, and it honestly surprises me that fans of Doom 3 argue that Doom Eternal isn't Doom enough. Yet, ignore how blatantly un-Doom Doom 3 is. I have a lot to say about this game, and honestly my brain is kind of jumping all over the place as I write this review, so I'm going to try and keep some structure to it. Let's get into why I don't like this game. Doom 3 starts off with a lengthy cutscene and walkie-talkie segment. I am just starting this game and I'm already irritated and bored. Yes, this is what I want, a drawn-out, unskippable walkie-talkie section through monochrome halls starting off my Doom game. This part takes forever. I just want to get to the combat. This whole part is annoying and tedious. It's kind of weird from a story perspective too. It's called Doom 3, which implies that it's a sequel, but when it came out it was considered a retelling of Doom 1. But then when Doom RPG came out, they changed it to be a prequel. I personally think of Doom 3 as a prequel myself, even if the dates and specific events don't line up exactly with other games. But since Doom 1, 2, and 64 are all canon in the 2016 and Eternal universe, it makes sense to me that 3 would also be canon. Doom 3 takes us all the way back to the beginning. We see the demonic invasion on Mars caused by the experiments, excavation, and interdimensional travel of the UAC, helmed by the corrupted Dr. Betruger. We witness engineers and fellow Marines die at the hands of Hell. It's up to Doom 3 guy to fight his way through the demonic horde and stop Betruger. With Doom 3, id really tried to make a horror game instead of an action game. The majority of levels take place in cramped hallways and vents in different locations of Mars base. Levels are dark, requiring the use of a flashlight to see and move around sometimes. Combat in dark areas requires you to choose between using your flashlight or a gun. It even goes as far as to give us escort missions in which we need to protect people with lights in order to see. You see bodies of dead Marines and engineers littering the halls, and the first enemies you encounter are zombified versions of dead men. Instead of a blazing metal soundtrack, Doom 3 has an ambient accompaniment, filling your ears with tortured screams, crying mothers, and demonic growls. Standard horror game stuff. The beginning of the game actually feels more like a haunted house sim, with enemies popping out at you and frequent attempts at jump scares. Many of Doom 3's core design choices are just anti-Doom. Movement and combat speed are so slow. Even with a sprint mechanic, it feels slower than the base movement speed of literally any other Doom game. Combat is wonky, with weak guns that provide unsatisfying feedback with weak sound design. They give the feeling of toy guns with paper bullets. It has the worst shotgun ever, too. You literally need to be right up on an enemy to kill something. Every gun also needs to be reloaded, which slows the combat down even more. Doom 3 honestly feels more like a cover shooter, as charging out in the open will often result in death or at least taking some serious damage. Fighting against hit-scan enemies took me a while to get used to too, because I felt like the movement speed was way too slow to properly strafe and dodge enemy fire. And yet, Doom 3 still has health packs instead of a regen system. You still carry every gun and collect ammo instead of replacing the gun with ones found in the map. Combat rooms are claustrophobic, leaving very little room to strafe or dodge enemy attacks. And I often found myself getting stuck on a wall or corner and dying because I couldn't get away. When taking damage, your screen will shake all over too, making it hard to aim and fire back at an enemy, also resulting in quick deaths. The combat mechanics definitely force you to slow down and peer out from cover or take enemies out from across the room instead of engaging like in other Doom games. And to compensate for this slowed down, wonky combat, you really never fight more than a handful of enemies at a time. Even in the occasional bigger arenas, you only fight maybe 5 enemies at a time at most. This all plays into the overemphasis of the horror over action in Doom 3. The game honestly feels more like Dead Space than Doom, which is kind of ironic to me because people hated Dead Space 3 for going with the fast and action-oriented approach, but Doom 3 doesn't really seem to get that same general animosity from the general public for going slow in horror. And I love horror games. I play a lot of them, I play them often. I have an entire series in October dedicated to them. And I do love horror action games like Dead Space and BioShock as well. But for some reason, this just doesn't work for me with Doom. What I like about Doom is playing as a force of nature, a badass, running around with well-designed levels at Mach 11, making demon yogurt with giant guns with industrial heavy metal trumpeting your dance of destruction. To me, that's what Doom is. I love the series for its fast-paced, skill-focused combat and well-designed levels. And before you go off about Doom 64 also being a horror game, yeah, it might have had dark level design and an ambient soundtrack, but the gameplay still looked like this. Doom 3 just isn't interesting from a combat perspective. And the story isn't all that exciting to me either, presenting a grounded version of the Doom Marine in the UAC without the fantastical elements from Doom 2016 and Eternal, and without the zaniness of Doom 1 and 2 like the story with Daisy. But we're not done with the negative shit yet. Every level looks the exact same, at least for the majority of the game. Monochrome, grayish-green metal halls, warehouse-looking spaces, and blood-stained medic tables. There is barely any level variation for 29 of the 39 levels. Doom 3 is also the most linear of all Doom games as well, with no secret areas, and only one way to tackle every encounter. I find it funny that people accuse Doom Eternal of being linear and restricting when Doom 3 is more linear and restricting in every single way. Keycards are replaced with data pads, which give emails to read and voice recordings to listen to. It's shit that I absolutely do not care about. But unlike in Doom 2016 and Eternal, where I can just skip and ignore listening to these things, reading and listening to the codex is kind of essential in Doom 3, because they give you codes needed to open doors and supply closets. And since ammo is really scarce in Doom 3, you really need to look at these codes. So I found myself scrolling through emails just to find the codes to open these things. It's also really hard to hear the recordings when playing them in the background due to the game sound effects and story dialogue, and there's no subtitles, so if you want to listen to these things, you really just need to sit there in the menu.
Refused his clearance. That's right, shot. Luckily, a nearby team from maintenance caught up to it and smashed it with a pipe wrench before it could chase Pat down. Now, it'll be days before he's ready to return to work, and I don't think you'll ever get him close to one of those bots again.
I also hate the redesign for some of the enemies. The Hell Knight gets a pass because it's been adopted into Doom 2016 and Eternal as a way to differentiate it from the Baron, and I think it works well and looks cool. The Archvile is fine, it's barely been touched and functions the exact same. The Mancubus is also okay, they didn't change it drastically other than giving it tentacles on its face. But the Cacodemon sucks! The defining feature of the singular eye is gone. It's unrecognizable and just looks dumb. Though, to be fair, the 64 Cacodemon was a bad design too, and it looks more like a Pain Elemental. They should have swapped the Pain Elemental and Cacodemon in Doom 64. The Lost Souls also look dumb. The Revenant looks silly with its little cannons and Power Ranger armor. I don't like the Cyber Demon, and the Pinkies look awful. I hate these fucking Pinky Demons. They look so stupid. And, like the Cacodemon, unrecognizable from its other designs. It reminds me of Garroth from Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, but much less scary and intimidating. It's also unfortunate that the Doom movies seem to use Doom 3 as their main source material for story, tone, and monster design, because those movies suck. Enemy AI is dumb as lead too, oftentimes running past you or staying in one spot as you pick them off. Enemies spawn in the same spot every time too, making the game very predictable. Predictability is an issue with Doom 3 in general. When the room goes dark or flashes red, you know an enemy is going to teleport in. The spawns are really bad, and you can honestly just kill enemies the second they spawn in most of the time. There's literally rooms where enemies will spawn one on top of the other. You don't even need to move to kill them. I filmed this exact same thing happening 4 years ago in our Doom 2016 review.
Released Doom 3 as Doom 3 Bfg Edition. The Bfg Edition came with the Doom 3 expansion Resurrection of Evil, as well as a bonus set of levels. The
predictability also hurts the horror vibe of the game, because things stop being scary when you know they're coming and you know you can kill them. The early levels are just a slog to play, with long waits for lifts and elevators. The lift part was so irritating. Needing to control this thing through a maze as it moves so slowly through the dark just wasn't fun. Controlling this claw to remove gas canisters wasn't fun. I get that they were going for interactive level design, but it just wasn't fun. And shit like this honestly hurts replay playthroughs. Why would I want to suffer through these levels again? The combination of slow movement, weak combat, monotonous level design, unskippable interactive walkie-talkie parts, dumb AI, predictability, and forced codec reading just create what can be best described as a boring slog of a game. Why is Doom fucking boring? It was around the monorail level when I stopped playing the game again. I just wasn't having fun and wanted off the ride. But that's when I remembered. Oh yeah, the Bfg Edition exists. So if you're already pissed that I spent the majority of this video shitting on Doom 3, here's another hot take for you. I prefer the Bfg Edition. Again, I prefer the Bfg Edition. I stopped playing the original game with the monorail and switched to the Bfg Edition and finished the game in that version. The Doom 3 Bfg Edition is so much better than the original Doom 3. They fixed many of the core gameplay issues I had with the original release. The Bfg division increases the base movement speed, it gives more ammo with ammo pickups, and guns have bigger clips. These are 3 changes alone that make the game feel much faster and more like a Doom game to me. It's a very small change, but it makes strafing and movement feel so much better. You can even bunny hop, strafe jump, and rocket jump now, but since levels are so small and restrictive, I don't really see the reason to utilize these skills at all. With the increased movement speed, sprint almost becomes like a dash function to me, where I would use it primarily in combat to dodge enemy attacks, instead of a means to try and rush forward through the level. Another design change that I love was the decision to put the flashlight on your shoulder and give you the ability to shine your flashlight while using a gun. It makes these dark parts a lot less tedious and also speeds the game up and makes it more action-oriented. Some of the other appreciated benefits of the Bfg Edition included an FOV slider, better frame rates and performance, better visuals with higher resolutions and better textures. This is especially apparent when looking at the Marine's armor in cutscenes, better enemy scripting, though it still has some janky spawns. The Bfg Edition also comes with Doom 1 and 2, a bonus map pack for Doom 2, the Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil expansion, and the previously unreleased Doom 3 Lost missions. You get much more content with the Bfg Edition. The new Bethesda launcher re-release of Doom 3 is the Bfg Edition as well, but doesn't include Doom 1 and 2, by the way.
They simply can't handle life here. They're exhausted and overworked. If I had a larger, more competent staff and bigger budget, even these few accidents could have been avoided.
And now, I am going to give some positives about the game. First off, the game is graphically very good for a 2004 game. Human models look dated, but level textures and demons all look pretty good. Keep in mind, other games that came out in 2004 were Half-Life 2, Halo 2, San Andreas, World of Warcraft, Jak 3, Sims 2, Tony Hawk's Underground, KOTOR 2, Up Your Arsenal, Vampire the Masquerade, Spider-Man 2, Twin Snakes, Sly 2, and Far Cry, amongst many others. Holy shit, that was a good year. And I still think that Doom 3 looks comparable and even better than a lot of those that came out. I like the new enemies. The spider-like trites are cool, the maggots are cool, new fodder enemies that add a unique look even if they're weak. The commandos are a nice change to the zombie lineup. Trying to avoid their tentacle as they barrel towards you gives you some nice variation. The cherubs are downright disturbing. Creepy babies in games are a sure way to get me on edge, and seeing these things fly at me always had me frantically trying to shoot those fuckers out of the sky. The horror atmosphere was well done for the most part, with some creepy sound effects and voices crying off in the distance and demonic growls to make sure you stay on your toes. But it really just came down to an interactive haunted house. The main menu song is rad, and I like that it was included in Doom Eternal. I also began to like the endgame guns quite a bit. I found the plasma gun especially fun to use, and it became my main workhorse gun. I also liked the chain gun and the rocket launcher. I love how fast the rockets shoot out of this thing. The BFG was solid. I definitely see the influence in Doom 2016 and Eternal's BFG. I liked that you could charge it up like Mega Man's Mega Buster, and I really liked the Soul Cube. That thing was a really good addition to the arsenal. Charging it by killing demons really helped set it apart from the rest of your arsenal, and the fact that it could essentially one-shot any enemy in the game aside from bosses, while also healing you, allowed for some strategic use. That said, I didn't really like how the game would strip those guns from you periodically, making you reclaim them in different areas. It doesn't really allow for the weapon mastery and experimentation that Doom Eternal allows. I know Doom 3 is a lot less skill-based, so it makes sense, but it's still a complaint. I love these little robot dudes, and I will die for them. The absolute best part of the game was the last 8 levels or so. Once you go to hell, the level designs open up and become much more interesting. Doom 3's depiction of hell is great, showing flaming lakes, prisons in the sky, tortured souls. It's definitely the highlight of the game and makes the first 20 or so chapters even more boring in comparison. Upon leaving hell, I just wanted to go back because it was much more interesting than the base levels. Luckily, the rest of the levels are more interesting and lively with caverns and excavation areas. I also found the final boss really easy. You just kind of skate around him in an arena, killing off fodder enemies and unleashing the Soul Cube when filled. Hitting the Cyber Demon like 5 times kills him. Then we're greeted to an ending cutscene, We see Dr. Betruger transform into a demonic dragon called the Maledict and fly away, and then the game ends. I honestly feel like if they made the beginning shorter and cut out all the tedious interactive shit, this game would have flowed a lot better and honestly would have been much less of a slog to play. All that said, for the first playthrough, I finished the game in about 7 hours, which is pretty short, and as a whole, the game was really easy in general. I got a speedrunning achievement for it in my first playthrough, so I don't know if I just finished the game ridiculously fast or what, but yeah. That said, even though the last set of levels is a big improvement from the rest of the game, it still suffers from pacing and speed issues, and I still think I would have enjoyed it more if they would have went full action game with it. Doom 3 is a game that I really want to like. It's Doom. I don't want to shit on Doom. It doesn't bring me joy that I don't like this game. It's not the worst game I've ever played, but I really don't like it. I find it slow, boring, and tedious. Even though it only took me 7 hours, it felt like I spent a lot longer on it. Despite the fact that I enjoyed the last few levels, it's still my least favorite game in the franchise, and never gets as fun as any of the other games in the series to me. I understand what they were going for. A horror Doom game where the Marine is very vulnerable and human and not an unyielding badass. Alien instead of aliens. And maybe a Doom spin-off like that could work, but I just don't think Doom 3 executed it very well, and I don't think that sort of game should be told in a mainline numbered entry. 2007's Bioshock and 2008's Dead Space both did the story-driven sci-fi horror shooter thing much better in my opinion, and those games make Doom 3 feel even more off in comparison. If you love the game, I don't want to take that away from you. You're entitled to your opinion, and you should love the game if you really do. Maybe someday I'll look back fondly at Doom 3 and revel in its supposed glory, but right now I have no desire to ever really come back to it. I'm very glad that the series went back to its over-the-top, fast-paced, action-focused power fantasy roots with Doom 2016 and Eternal, and I hope it continues down that track.
Recon 1. What about Dr. Betruger? He's nowhere to be found, sir.